Hey, Learning for Good listener. I appreciate you joining me each week to get tips and tricks for nonprofit L&D pros. I love sharing my experience and bringing you top guests from the field. But I'm not the only one doing the work around here. This podcast is edited and produced by my friends at Idea Blossoms. Idea Blossoms partners with consultants and organizations who either have or want to start a podcast. They do everything from the initial podcast launch to monthly podcast management and can support you with audio and video editing, as well as content repurposing if you want to share key ideas through blogs or newsletters or social media. I'm sharing this for two reasons. One, I am so grateful for Idea Blossoms and how they help me bring episodes to you each week. But two, I know many of you have or have considered offering a podcast as part of your learning strategy. As a key contributor and sponsor of this podcast, Idea Blossoms is offering an exclusive 30% discount for Learning for Good listeners, applied to the first invoice. They have 2 spots open for 2025, so head to ideablossoms.com or email Rosa at ideablossoms.com to get started. You can find links in the show notes, and don't forget to mention the Learning for Good podcast to claim this incredible offer.
Hey friend, do you want to offer meaningful learning solutions that create behavior change, fit in the flow of work, and yield real results for your nonprofit? If yes, this is the podcast for you. Join me as I explore instructional design and leadership development best practices, as well as change management, belonging, and influence. If we haven't met yet, I'm Heather, and I've been in your shoes. I'm a learning and development consultant and founder of Skill Masters Market. Before starting my business, I led learning and leadership development initiatives for a large national nonprofit. I know what it's like to need to develop your staff quickly and effectively and to build the relationships and cut through the organizational layers to be successful. And I'm bringing all of that to you in this podcast. So block your calendar, turn off your Teams or Slack chat, and let's dive in. It's Learning for Good. One of the biggest challenges nonprofit L&D pros tell me they face is their inability to get their stakeholders to try something new. We have to be salespeople, negotiators, creatives, data enthusiasts, change leaders, and so much more. And sometimes it's hard. And that's why today I'm so excited to have Jamie Bussey from the National Audubon Society join me on the podcast. Jamie joined National Audubon Society at an exciting time. They had organizational strategies in place, and there was a hunger for learning and development. But she joined as a team of one, and she basically had to start from scratch. And just like the rest of us, she had people who were excited, people who were hesitant, and people who were busy or pulled in different directions. So how did she navigate these challenges to bring about the change she knew they needed? That's what we are exploring today. Let's dive in. It's Learning for Good. A learning and development leader, Jamie's expertise includes creating comprehensive learning strategies across diverse organizational structures. Her career has spanned multiple continents and nonprofit industries, from youth workforce programming in the Middle East and North Africa to an award-winning digital communications and learning program for refugees and the staff supporting them. In her current role at the National Audubon Society, she oversees organization-wide strategy for learning and development. She holds a Master of Arts in International Training and Education from American University and a Project Management Professional Certification from the Project Management Institute. Jamie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited for our conversation. I know when I talk to training pros, nonprofit training pros specifically, one of the biggest challenges they tell me they face is just getting stakeholders, getting subject matter experts to try new things and not always fall back on how they've always done things. And so I'm really excited for our conversation to hear more about how you've navigated changes and challenges as an L&D leader and just learn more about your work.
Great. Looking forward to sharing about my experiences and hope they're useful for those listening.
All right. So before we get in too far, I always like to hear a little bit about your career journey. How did you get where you are? And tell us a little bit about your work at National Audubon Society as well.
Yeah, so I actually started in the field of journalism. I worked at a daily newspaper, and then I worked at National Geographic before I joined the Peace Corps. And the Peace Corps is what I would say was my entry into the education field. I was a secondary school teacher, and as a part of our service, we also did capacity building for local teachers and new volunteers. And that was the part I enjoyed the most because that type of work has multiplying effects. So from that point on, over the last 15 years, I've had the opportunity to work in learning and development in a variety of capacities, different types of roles. I had the opportunity to work training United Nations peacekeepers in nonviolent conflict resolution, creating a career development program for refugees that were resettled into the United States. I then went on to do a technical assistance project, which was Settle In was the award-winning project that we worked on. And then 2 years ago, at the end of this month, I joined National Audubon Society, and it was such an exciting opportunity. It's been full of rewards, and it was a different role for me because it was an organizational-wide role, whereas a lot of my previous roles had been working either on a specific project or program, had a combination of project management, change management, communications, training. And so this was a great opportunity to really focus in on learning development and really look at how we can use the resources and the tools and what learning development represents to create impact across an entire organization.
Yeah, I could definitely see how all of your different pieces of your career journey, all the stops along the way, probably really benefit you now in your current role. So when you arrived at National Audubon Society, a lot of L&D programs didn't exist. You shared that with me previously. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've created since joining?
Yeah, so I think before I get to what has been created, I want to set a bit of a picture, which is that when I arrived, I am very grateful that I had the benefit during my first 90 days to really spend time learning, building relationships, and assessing need. And at that time, I was a one-person learning and development team. And so as I was building, I knew that I needed to keep in mind how to build a program or a strategy, a framework that would be sustainable, with the idea that if I was one person, how could I leverage different support systems? I also would need to take an iterative approach to implementing the programs and activities to gain quick wins. And the requests needed to have direct ties to our organizational strategy and align with change transformation. So, as I mentioned, when I arrived, National Audubon Society has 800 staff. They work across 11 countries, 15 states, and regional offices. And so the strategy that was rolled out at that time really provided a roadmap for where the organization wanted to go. And so really looking at the business case for the decisions and really emphasize that, like, not doing everything all at once. That was really important. So with that context in mind, the first thing I did was that needs assessment. We didn't have a learning management system when I arrived. We offered harassment prevention courses through a third-party vendor. And in the first 3 months, I brought on Open Sesame, which gave us access to more than 200,000 courses, plus a learning management system and 24/7 support for the users. And that part was really important. And to your point around how to pivot within different organizations, I hadn't previously had experience with Open Sesame. I essentially looked at what was the business that I was in, even though it was a nonprofit. It wasn't the same type of nonprofit and structure as some of the other organizations. In terms of the business case, it timed out that our renewal for the existing compliance courses was around the corner, and I was able to put forward that the price per user created a lot of savings using Open Sesame, plus we got more from that, and I was able to then leverage that partnership for all of our other learning and development programming, from onboarding to our leadership and manager training. So after that, that was sort of like the first thing I really wanted to have. From there, I built out our blended onboarding program. I piloted and then rolled out a people manager program called Leading the Flock. And I facilitated, as a part of a team, the change management process for our migration to Workday and updated our performance management training. And then I engaged Bravely, which is another one of our partners, for unlimited coaching, first for all of our people managers. And then within, I would say 9 months, we then expanded that to be all of our staff. So I was really fortunate, maybe a month shy of my year anniversary, to bring on 2 staff members. And so from there, we've continued to enhance our onboarding. We've just added a Bird Buddy program. And we've also been able to support strategic initiatives around communications and development. So that's a little bit of what I've put into place since arriving. And a lot of it was just like in small steps. So, the onboarding program, enhancing the virtual instructor session, and then maybe letting 6 months go by and let's re-up that and enhance that. We didn't have an About Audubon self-paced course that people could take when they started. So then we added that. So I think that was a really important piece, is that it sounds like a lot when I draw it out, but it was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing first and we're going to get that in place. And that's going to help build on this. And then we're going to put the other thing in place after that.
Like building blocks.
Yes, exactly. I did love Legos as a child, so it kind of makes sense.
There you go. And you have accomplished a lot. So even as building blocks, there are a lot of building blocks that have been put into place since you arrived a couple of years ago. So I want to talk a little bit more with you about the Leading the Flock program for people managers. I know that's a fairly robust program that you've created. It was a very new, something different for the organization. And a lot of times when we as L&D want to do something new or different, we are met with excitement, hesitation, resistance, right? All the different emotions, fear that can possibly come out because it's different, it's a change. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about how you navigated that. Before we get into those details, though, can you tell us a little bit more about what that program is and what those needs were? You mentioned that you started with a needs assessment. So what those needs were, why was it created?
Yeah, so Leading the Flock is our internal program for people managers. It's a 3-tiered program that uses a combination of instructor-led, peer-to-peer learning, online courses, and one-on-one coaching. As I mentioned during my initial onboarding, I spent quite a bit of time conducting one-on-one interviews, focus group sessions, small group discussions from various levels of the organization. And immediately a reoccurring theme was consistency and training around people management and the different processes and approaches that people managers use. So the actual scope and design of the program was born out of first conducting focus group discussions with managers who had previously participated in another manager program that had been done within a specific department, and they had taken that training the last 2 years. And so I wanted to follow up with them, like, what did they get from the training? What were they able to apply? What did they remember? Because I wanted to see how that training resonated with them as learners. And then from that, I used the analysis to construct a pilot program. And we invited 20 people managers from across the organization at different teams. It's always really important to make sure there's like diversity in terms of who is in the pilot program. And then based on this and other ongoing feedback from that pilot, we built in this flexibility of online and instructor-led components in these different pieces. So in the focus groups, one of the things that people talk about, and this we hear often, I got so much from meeting and engaging with my peers, right? So there's so much of that. And so designing instructor-led programs that allow for that. Coaching, there's oftentimes when you do training, there's this idea that, okay, I know I shouldn't say this as a learning development person, like, here's an hour, we're going to totally transform your people manager skills in that hour. If only I could wave a wand. So like the other piece of it is making sure that there's clear actions they can take after the training to apply what they've learned. And then also providing the one-on-one coaching to create that customization that we might not be able to do in a larger group, or maybe somebody's not as comfortable. So that program was built out of looking at all of those pieces. The other piece is the online courses that we selected. We created consistency. So we use publishers like Center for Creative Leadership, Harvard Business Mentor, and those were all available through our partnership with Open Sesame. And cumulatively, the complete program actually represents at least 60 hours of learning and development. So if someone goes through each level, they're able to do that. It's been really great because it's created a shared language across our people managers. It also allows us to get some different tools out that are then tied to our performance management. It also models our values and also integrates our competency framework, which we rolled out in the fall. And so it's a good entry point to build all those other skills that we have through our other processes and programs.
Do you wish you could connect with other nonprofit learning and development leaders? I know what it feels like to want someone to bounce ideas off of and to learn from, someone who really understands you and your work. Imagine if you could have a simple way to meet people in the field, ask questions, and share information. That's why I created the Nonprofit Learning and Development Collective, where nonprofit L&D, talent management, and DEI leaders can connect with each other quickly and easily in a virtual space. When you join this community, you will walk away with a new, diverse, and powerful network and a sounding board for your staff development needs. So if you're ready to exchange ideas and collaborate with your peers, come join the Nonprofit L&D Collective.
Yeah, it sounds like a really robust program. And just the fact that you're able to base it in your needs assessment, complement the competency framework that exists, and then provide all of these different pieces to help them actually take action really makes a lot of sense. And love the coaching component. I think there is only so much we can do in training. I often talk about that too, as far as I know how to create training that will create behavior change, but there's so many other factors that actually impact whether that change happens and what happens when they get back to their kind of quote unquote day-to-day work, right? What happens when they get back there has such an impact on whether they change their behavior or pick up any new habits. Because it's so easy just to fall back into what you were doing before. So
it's interesting because to that point about the timing, right? So for example, when I was looking at one of the components of a different training that had been done, there was a check-in template. And it was a beautiful check-in template. There was lots of details. I looked at it and thought, well, how long would it actually take to complete this check-in template before I arrive to my check-in? And anybody, when you have a check-in template, if it's super long, you might do it at first, and then you'll be like, this is taking me too much time. And so we provided a simplified check-in document. And then in addition to providing that, we provided guidance that for people managers, because some people managers have a process they like. So we said, look, if you have a process that you like and it reflects some of the principles that we want you to get out of check-ins, such as problem solving, then by all means use that. But we invite you to look at this template as a way to get fresh ideas or to create more collaboration with your colleagues. And so exactly your point, it's also not just the content, but the tools and how you provide them in the framing for people so they can find them accessible for their use.
Yeah, it's got to be easy. I hate to say it that way, but it's got to be simple. It's got to be easy if you want people to make a change. So
yeah, totally.
All right. So you come in, you've done your needs assessment, you are starting to put together this program for people managers. What are some of the challenges that you faced with creating something new like this? And how were you able to kind of navigate some of those challenges across the organization?
Yeah, there were a couple of challenges. The first challenge that I would highlight is competing priorities. And this existed on a couple levels. One level being, I joined the organization as work plans for our fiscal year were already set. And so I had to navigate why what I was asking for was critical to add to existing plans. So in one sense, I was successful with Open Sesame, but for other requests, it took a little bit more time and patience. And so that was one part of the competing priorities. The second level is, which I think we often hear as learning and development professionals, is while there is at least in our case, I was fortunate it was a clear hunger and desire at all levels of the organization for learning and development. The common challenge was time. How do I do this? I don't have enough time. Where do I fit this in? And we still are mastering that skill. But for me, this is addressed by creating learning programs that align with need and are very learner-centered, and And for example, when we did the Leading the Flock program, there's a 201 level, and at that level, there's 6 instructor-led sessions. You are not required to go to all 6 of those. We ask that you go to 4 of the 6 to get your certificate of completion. There's also a certain number of online courses that are required, and then additional optional. What we find is once people go to 1 or 2 of the sessions, they really want to go to the other ones, or they are then asking, like, can I get the recording? We don't record those because we are facilitating a lot of discussion. But on the last round, we built in a flexibility where I did a makeup session for a few of the people managers. So really aligning the flexibility and what it takes to complete the program. And then the other ways that I've used to address the time is shifting the perspective. And this one's a little bit long-term, that learning development is a nice to have to an imperative to achieve the impact that we want to have. So when we communicate and we talk about the program, that's where adding that integration with our competencies, tying it back to how this is going to impact the results that you're going to achieve with your team, shows that it's a value for the staff members. So I think those are 2 levels of the competing priorities. Another important consideration I had to navigate was building trust and credibility. So while there was a lot of excitement around learning and development, and I was fortunate to have support at the highest level of the organization had gone through a lot of changes. And there had been training interventions in the past that had not always been successful or what people expected. And so doing things like piloting, like we did in the Leading the Flock, and we were transparent. We said, we're piloting this, and part of this is for you to give feedback so that you can help create something that's going to be used for other individuals. And that's a similar approach when we rolled out our competency framework. We wanted to do a competency assessment to help with learning and development. Same thing, we got a couple teams, and we piloted, and we are able to get really beautiful insights from the staff that we may not think of. And then it helps when we go to roll it out, because now we also have created champions for the work that we've done and excitement around those pieces. So I think those are some of the challenges and considerations I had to navigate in this space.
I absolutely think you are not the only person navigating those challenges in L&D. I think that's having worked internally at a national nonprofit, competing priorities, time, trust, and credibility. Like, these are all common challenges. So I really appreciate hearing, 1, that you faced them, but 2, how you navigated that. I think we're all trying to figure out, how do we bring people alongside? How do we help people see the value of what we're doing and be able to communicate that, so that when we want to do something different, or we want to do something new, or we have an idea for how we can actually achieve a result, people are ready and willing to jump in and support that idea. So what advice do you have for other nonprofit leaders who are maybe coming into an organization and starting from scratch in some ways? When you came in, there just wasn't a lot there. And so, what advice would you give to other people who are in a similar situation?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, don't try to do everything at once. Find the most important and valuable piece that can make the greatest and most immediate impact, and start with that. This may not always be what people ask for directly. So part of sifting through your needs assessment is really keying in on what is really underneath some of the requests, because often you'll ask a question or you'll have someone come to you and say, can you do a training for this? And then when you dig a little deeper, there's actually something else going on. So that training is not really going to solve for whatever you originally thought. So I think that combination of don't try everything at once, and then really listening to what's going to make the most immediate impact. The second piece of advice that I would have is recognize that it's not enough to have a great product or program. 2 important pieces for me with learning development is strong communication strategy and how you're using data, both external research or internal monitoring and evaluation processes, to demonstrate the results and the why behind your ask. So I think those are 2 pieces that are so critical So every time we have a learning program, there's a communications plan alongside it. There's a monitoring evaluation plan. We go and look at those numbers. We go and look at that feedback afterward, and we iterate and we improve upon that. And so I think those are two things that even if you had a great product, if your communications and your engagement isn't there, no one will take advantage of it. And then I think the last thing is not underestimating the value of developing skills and change management. I think that is something that, particularly with learning and development, when you're doing a lot of different initiatives and different programs, it's important to recognize that what you're providing to staff is one piece of their whole employee experience, their whole day. And so recognizing how you're going to position what you're providing to them, and then also how to create a safe and comfortable space to work through change with them. So when we rolled out the Leading the Flock program, there was a lot of care and consideration around making sure we're clear that we're offering this ongoingly. If it is not a good time for you to take it, not a problem. You can take it when we offer it again. If there's one piece that you want and you need it now, there's coaching. And so I think making sure that there's a lot of intentionality to how you roll out initiatives and manage that change.
So good. And I think often overlooked in learning and development, even just the communication piece of it, but adding in that change management component. Like, so many times we create things and we release them into the world, and that's that. But there's so much more involved in getting it to people, getting people bought in, and making sure that it's working. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Jamie, thank you for joining me today.
No problem. It's great being here.
Jamie's approach to navigating change and the resulting challenges is so relatable, and there are so many lessons for us as L&D pros. From starting with a needs assessment to truly understand those needs and start to gain buy-in, to using an iterative approach, to testing those new experiences through pilots, to always collecting the data and sharing the wins. These are things that we all can and should be doing. These methods are accessible to us and they make a difference. As Jamie shared, it's not enough to have a great product or program. People have to know about it. We have to demonstrate our value. If you're curious how other nonprofit L&D pros are navigating similar challenges, come join us inside the Nonprofit L&D Collective. It's the only private community for nonprofit training pros by training pros. And this conversation with Jamie, it originally happened in the Nonprofit L&D Collective with a private Q&A between Nonprofit L&D Collective members and Jamie. The value is so, so good. I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.
Hey friend, was this episode helpful for you? Did you like what you heard? Do you want more content like this? Here are 3 things you can do. Hit subscribe. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. Share this episode with a colleague. This means so much to me personally. I read every review, but it also helps me learn what content you like most so I can create more of what you want. All right, turn that Teams or Slack chat back on when you're ready, and I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.